Psychedelics are overrated. So I just watched a video about ayahuasca trip with some guy. It was he was reading a Reddit story. Actually, I don't want to find it because I don't want to put him on blast. But uh, yeah, he was telling like how. I mean, he was talking so nonchalantly, as if in a matter of fact, like how psychedelics is so cool and everything. Like as if, like oh, some people have done 1,000 experiences. I mean, might as well fucking pull the plug then. Why the fuck are you going on living then? It's like that becomes another form of escapism, dude. 1,000 fucking ayahuasca, that's like every day for 3 years. What the fuck? And he was talking as if in such a way, as if it's like so, matter of fact, like as if that's it. That's what it's supposed to be like. What the fuck? Yeah, that's what I mean. So, how is it any different than smoking cigarettes? Oh, it's bad for you. It's bad for you what? Because the logic is people who's doing cigarettes, they're basically trying to alleviate stress, right? Again, obviously I don't support smoking nicotine or anything, but yeah, it's like, or like alcohol or whatever, like they're like trying to alleviate the suffering by little, and hopefully, I don't know if it does them any good in the long run. But same with fucking doing ayahuasca every day. It's like, what the fuck, dude? It's like it's another form of escapism. And I see all this. I made a video, titled "Psychedelics Are Another Trap." How all these yuppie kids go to ayahuasca, like 24-year-old kids. They go and they think they found the meaning of life. And as Carl Jung said, beware of unarmed wisdom. But anyways, this is not about my rant. It's about some gentleman named Locklin. He's on WordPress, Scott Locklin, and I will drop the link of his website below. And I asked him permission once if I could make a video about it, and so I don't know if I should title it "Psychedelics Are Overrated" because that's the title of with this video, but its actual title is "Psychedelics Are Waste of Life." So without further ado, I'll read it, and then I'll tell my interpretation, which, as you've already heard just now, what it is. But again, I'm not the most articulate speaker, so bear with me. And mind you, I have experience with certain psychedelics, so it's not like I'm those anal retentive, this square guy who's like, but it's like, dude, because the way I see it, psychedelics are like cheat code to life. So I mean, it's like if you're doing math, if you're looking at the answer at the book, at the back of the book, I, what's the point then? I mean, it's like as Alan Watts would say, it was like some Zen. It like Shobogenzo, like it lets the cat out of the bag too much. It reveals everything. I mean, what's the point of the whole point of whole enchantment of life is like you don't know it, certain bewilderment of the uncertainty, and I mean, what's the point? That's why some people get jaded and like after they return from DMT trip or ayahuasca or whatever. Anyways, so without further ado, here's Scott Locklin, um, title titled Psychedelics Are Waste of Life, posted in Fun Locklin Notebook by Scott Locklin on January 17, 2021. Psychedelic enthusiasts are an irritation of modernity. People make wild claims about these substances. These claims are mostly demonstrably horseshit. I write this in the hopes that I'll influence some young people to at least examine their choices. I don't think psychedelics are the worst thing in the world, but they're definitely not a good thing. I think their use is bad for moral character, and I think it is trivially obvious that civilization has decayed since their use became popular and widespread. My bona fides. I've used the things on and off from teenage years to mid 30s, primarily for entertainment, but I also attempted various man optimized tricks with them that are presently popular. I'm a scientist, at least somewhat capable of reasoning and looking objectively at myself and others. I'm allergic to bullshit, even very popular bullshit, maybe especially popular bullshit. Psychedelic enthusiasm is popular bullshit. I'm not even going to get deep into psychological studies because, as we all know by now, these are almost entirely bullshit. Until recently, they were saying you'd grow broccoli like tumors on your noggin if you took the things. Now, that enthusiasts who enjoy the things instead of literal CIA mind control assassin and other government weirdos are involved in the research, quote unquote. They're being touted by irresponsible people as the next CBD oil panacea. And yes, CBD oil ought to be considered on all fours with snake oil unless you have some otherwise untreatable epilepsy or nausea. That's the main reason I'm writing this. The enthusiasts are almost entirely unopposed at present. Not only are the enthusiast researchers unopposed, but people who are personal enthusiasts are generally unopposed and have unearned social status. I confuse the shit out of these people because I have fairly extensive history of use, but still maintain they are about as personally useful as sniffing glue. I'll rely on a few statistics from the literature, but mostly I'm just going to rely on the humble tools of experience and rudimentary common sense. I won't address their use in alleged treatment modalities for depression or whatever other than to vaguely doubt they are any more effective than something like Benadryl, which is apparently a pretty good antidepressant if it does make your brain into Swiss cheese, taking it long term. I would argue that the types of improvement in outlook measured as positive outcome of psychedelic use would be similar for any novel, extreme, and unfamiliar experience, most of which are less obviously bad for you. While you have Berkeley dipshits like Michael Pollan actively shitting for this nonsense, other Berkeley lumpyhead dipshits who are vastly more intellectual, honest, and scientific in the reasoning are at least raising doubts. It boggles me on one need to credulously rely on studies, quote unquote. You just need to look around to know the irresponsible pollens of the world are selling snake oil. People who use the things on a regular basis think they bring back profound insights because the drugs make looking at a flower field profound. Yet, the actual insights brought back by the people on their quote unquote trips tend to be the type of thing a bit of celebration would take care of. Like, I mean to my family sometimes, and that's kind of shitty. I've yet to hear any. I have yet to hear of any sort of improvement in creativity or even a single interesting idea anyone who has ever brought back from psychedelics. Amphetamines have a vastly better track record of being useful stimulants for creativity. The last half of Paul Erdős' career was filled by benzodrine, as have countless musicians, engineers, and writers. There are many people who claim dropping acid make them more creative, but none of the people who make this claim are observably more creative than people who didn't drop acid, and 99.9% of them are mush-headed and self-regarding, which does seem to be the cognitive side effect of these drugs. The feeling of profundity are another thing that irritates me. If tripping balls is the most profound thing that happened in your life, you lead a sheltered life. I'd put it at best on the same level as going on a roller coaster or committing a minor crime as a law-abiding citizen. I can think of any number of life experiences which were, for me, vastly more profound than tripping balls. Sex, hunting in the forest, a primal altered state, every sense razor sharp, looking at nature through a microscope or telescope. Old time religion, violence, falling asleep, travel, newborn babies, heavy deadlifts, seduction, auto accidents, looking at a night sky, fighting, learning calculus and linear algebra, prolonged lack of sleep, love, dreams, even the really nice bottle of wine is more profound than mud tripping balls. I mean, psychedelics are different from these experiences, they're just not that amazing. I'm pretty sure never tried, heard stories, taking a shitload of Dramamine or Robitussin is actually more amazing, probably about as good for you. The people who use aren't good advertisements for their habits. While I know some who are heavy users and some large fraction of my close friends are novelty seekers who have tried or used at one point or another, and everyone's favorite Barno living in his school apartment over mom's garage is Joe Rogan, there are a lot of deserved stereotypes about people who use. Generally, they're more credulous about stupid things. Astrology, weird nutrition, QAnon, alien visitations, privilege theory, Russians under their bed, lost civilizations of ancient astronauts, magic crystals, whatever I mean. That's actually kind of cool. In principle, you can talk to such people about anything except perhaps the idea that the Church of Psychedelics is worshipping a false god. The stereotypical burner psychedelic user who admittedly have probably smokes hella weed, which, if it needs to be said here, is also obviously bad for you, has all the symptoms of prefrontal lobe lesions, poor emotional regulation, apathy, dropout, man, poor attention span, and poor ability to concentrate and solve abstract problems, bad memory, poor impulse control. I'm not saying everyone that uses such drugs has brain damage, but a lot of users who identify with some of the stuff sure like act like they do. On the upside, poor impulse control people are fun, and psychedelic users who are beyond hippie couch potato tend to do stuff which is more adventurous than most. Ernest Younger's novels got worse in literary quality after he dropped acid in 1948 too. Mar Clip in 1939 might have been his peak because of the foment in his life and his advancing age, or it might have been because he started punching holes in his brain later with his scientist friends. Can't say I can definitely say it that this is his literary style and creativity absolutely didn't improve with use. Thus, Abenteuerlichers, 1937, practically was psychedelic in intensity. Years before his use of psychedelics, he never wrote anything that visionary. Mind you, I think Umswil, 1977, is a work of towering genius, and I like much of his other post-war work as well. But his later work is complex, ponderous, and doesn't have the rays of artistic power that the earlier stuff does. Maybe the poetry is a young man's flowering, and the old man is more of a thorn bush. But the point I'm trying to drive home is acid absolutely didn't nourish the flower. We must at least consider the possibility it might have killed it. In the US, rate of use is somewhere around 15 to 25% depending on the population segment on the survey. If there was some increase in creativity or insight or artistic or improvement in technical, scientific change or personal awareness and social intelligence, this effect would be observable by now. Yeah. We don't live in a time of great creative foment. The last 60 years since the introduction to Western civilization has been vastly less creative than the previous 60 years. Very little to no great art, a dark age in architecture despite vastly more capabilities, chaos in interpersonal relations, even technology beyond improvements in lithography, a field noteworthy for lacking in dope fiends, has basically stalled for decades. On the other hand, we do live in a time of widespread paranoia, credulity, political unrest, mass hysteria, mass mental illness, social decay, and declining standards of living. Pretty much exactly what you'd expect if a significant fraction of the population turn their brains into Swiss cheese, just like your grandpa told would happen. I'm not blaming psychedelics for the mess we're in. I'm just inviting you to notice the things that are at least not observably getting better despite widespread usage, and in fact are obviously getting worse. So the idea that psychedelics do something obviously and profoundly positive must be considered false when applied as a mean field theory. The staff is known to cause immediate personality changes after one use. Opinions obviously differ as to whether these changes are an improvement. This stuff was popularized by CIA mind control experiments after all. Do you think the spooks wanted people to be awesome, independent, minded Superman or more mush-headed and controllable? Think hard. Spooks are the ones who made it popular. Pretty sure cultures with the psychedelics were more awesome than those where psychedelics have strong influence. Let's take examples from architecture. Psychedelics are still used as a model of schizophrenia and inducing schizotypal thinking in people. Again, schizotypicals who act like they have prefrontal lesions can be found at parties, but do you want to be that guy? Would you like to risk permanent or at least persistent for years visual field disturbances? What about the people who experience complete psychotic breaks? We all know people who never came back in some sense from these substances or who had mental illnesses afterwards. Enthusiasts will tell you a non-falsifiable happy horseshit about how they would have experienced psychotic breaks anyway and the drugs just made it come out sooner. This is incredibly stupid and only the incredulity induced by psychedelic use could make one take it seriously as an argument. Sure, very few to know people actually die from taking such things, but losing your soul and becoming a shambling, muttering lump of flesh is arguably worse. Microdosing is just as weak sauce. I tried it before it had a name, back when I was consuming late undergraduate work. It was a terrible mistake. When you're working to the limit of your mental ability, such as trying to learn physics while working a full-time job as a podunk redneck of dubious education background, you notice when things are helping or hurting. Microdosing hurt a lot. It's a nice stimulant, strong feelings of well-being, and you don't need morning coffee. It absolutely shreds your short-term memory and makes actual reasoning vastly more difficult. I tried a lot of things to get an edge. At the time, ginkgo and gotu kola were touted, and they might have had a mild effect which held. Microdosing LSD definitely hurt, ridiculously obviously so. I was talked into it by a guy I know was going to take a year off to microdose and learn topology rather than becoming a Perelman or Grothendieck, as he no doubt intended. He, of course, disappeared, literally never to be heard from again. I know people believe it helps them, but it's entirely subjective feeling. The science is pretty clear on this. No observable improvement on any axis. The risk-benefit ratio is vastly more obvious with speed and modafinil. Both drugs help in the short term, but are ultimately probably rat poison. There is no microdosing version of Paul Erdős. The Probability that you, as a special and unique snowflake, will be that microraising Paul Erdős are basically nil. Not that you should want to be Paul Erdős. He was a genius, but he seemed to have a fairly miserable life. Psychedelics use stinks of neoliberal Psychedelics use stinks of neoliberal suburban despair. It's a shitty chemical induced bugman religion, a primitive and subjective one that produces no art, no beauty, and no ideas of consequence. People get into this sort of thing because